Hi, my name is Abisoye and welcome back to my YouTube channel.
You've got an entity where you've gone from a loving, supportive relationship to someone who almost despises you, and that child represents you. So in order for the other party to move on, for mum to move on, she's got to remove that entity, and that unfortunately is us as fathers.
I'm Sylvie, born and raised in London as you can get. About me, well, mental health for me is a very important talking point, especially given how thriving social media is. So I like to use my platform to raise awareness for mental health. I think specifically being a black woman going through all these troubling times, I think it's important to use your voice and platform.
Hi, I'm Zena. I am about to start on my 30 plus journey. And I am originally from the Netherlands, Rotterdam. And I have moved here 4 years ago. And yeah, that's pretty much a bit about me.
Both guests have been given a set of questions to ask one another, but I've also encouraged them to feel free to ask their own questions too.
My first question actually to you, as you have spoken about it, is how has trauma affected your mental health journey as a black woman?
I feel like trauma I didn't really think about so much until majorly the last couple of years, but I'd say this year has been a major trauma affecting year. I mean, give it the George Floyd, the Ahmaud Arbery's, the Breonna Taylor's. So I'd say this year I was more conscious with actually dotting the links between, even though I don't live in obviously a lot of this is coming up in America, but we're living in London, and I think when you think of being black is not a country. It is people say black is political, but effectively we're talking about the whole diaspora.
Yeah.
So I think trauma has affected us all, I think subconsciously for a while, and like I said, this year I think I've been a lot more mindful as to little things like how much I'm taking in from social media, or even to the nitty gritty of, am I going to keep watching these videos of black men being shot, for people to understand that this is becoming an issue. So I think trauma has been triggering for my mental health. If I could say it in one sentence, trauma has been extremely triggering.
Yeah, I think for me, trauma, I've been thinking about trauma for a long time. This sounds really weird. But I think if I look at my background, I grew up in a very predominantly white neighborhood. I played tennis for 16 years, so that is like white of the whitest. And I've just been around people that did not really understand what it was being black.
Okay.
I went to a predominantly white school. And I think that definitely started impacting my mental health sooner. I just didn't know that it was trauma, and I didn't know that it was mental health that was being affected by it. So I think I really dived into it when I started studying like social work, and I've learned like a lot more about like what is trauma, how does it affect. But of course, for me specifically, my concern is that it's a very Western ideology of like what is trauma and how do we affect or are affected by it. And for me, it was just like, right, there's not a specific. It's not really clear how it affects black bodies or people from the African diaspora. So when I realized that, dealing with the difficulties of being the only person in a very predominantly white class did affect my mental health, and some of the microaggressions, but also the racism that I experienced was actually racism. I called it for what it was. I realized that, it was trauma. And I think I started working on it around 4 years ago. Yeah, so just really making sure that to call it what it was, and also to see how it affects specifically black bodies. But for me also at one point, being queer as well, so being queer and black, and a woman. Like it's you know, intersectionalities. And I was like, and I'm still in the process of like, right, trauma affects me as a Black person this way, but intersectionality is a bit different when you're tying all three together. So how I'm still in the process of it.
I was going to say, when we talk about trauma, you said that you knew for a while that you had, you knew what trauma was, but you started delving into it about 4 years ago. They say with a lot of mental health disorders, issues, a lot of it stems from childhood trauma. And I've always found that to be not so much worrying, but you know the question like what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Yeah. So, I mean, with my disorder, they talk a lot about childhood trauma. Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, was I more susceptible to trauma in general that then had me encounter a disorder, or was a disorder always there and that was what made my childhood more traumatic? Yeah. You know? No, it definitely makes sense. I mean, for me, it's, you have trauma, like a lot of things stems from childhood trauma. I think they call it like as an overview because like you have nature, you have nurture, you have all these types of different things that play into, you know, the way your parents were raised, who then raised you. Yeah. And then how does that go? So I'm like, how everybody calls it childhood trauma. Yes, it's rooted in those ages, as in, you know, from 6 to, or from, you know, I mean, let's just say 2 years old to, I don't know when, going up. But it is a lot more. It's like we have to dive into it instead of just calling it childhood trauma. Because especially as, you know, immigrants or, you know, children of parents who are coming from another country, there are so many levels still to it that is not automatically tied to. I don't want to tie it as childhood trauma straight away. I have another question. So just based on the fact that you were saying you was in a predominantly white neighborhood, as you call it. Yeah. I like the word neighborhood. Sounds American. We like in the hood. But coming from a predominantly white neighborhood. Yeah. You said that you encountered, you know, like incidents where you called stuff out, but was you always able to call out microaggressions and things? I didn't know what it was. Okay. So because I didn't have the language for it, I didn't know that it was literally 4 years ago that I learned to use the terms microaggressions, or actually calling it trauma, you know, calling anxiety, you know. I mean, I don't really like the word disorder, because I'm also thinking the normative society, I just think that's a disorder. It's just there's a whole issue with that in general for me. Okay. For me, I have ADD. They call it ADD, attention deficit disorder. I don't see it as a disorder. I see something as I look at the world differently. I just don't look at it through your eyes. So there's like I said before, it's just the language that I think can change a little bit. No, I've come to understand that. I think at the beginning when people talk about mental health, you should know such and such suffers with this, and I'm like, no, I don't suffer with it. I just live with it because ultimately, and until I was actually, you know, effectively diagnosed, I was always this person. Yeah, you guys just jumped on the bandwagon to define it. Yeah, as and when I probably went through the rails, but do you get what I mean? It's always been a normal, my norm. Yeah. Yet, it for society may be a bit abnormal. Yeah. Yeah, but that's the thing, and that's why I do want to specifically state: is it the Western society that we're talking about, or because if we look at the way, I really like to go diving back into like African history, African tribes, like how they dealt with certain ideas regarding mental health. Like, was it existence, or how did they deal with that? And I think, especially in the Western world, we want to name it and we want to claim it. I don't know why. Well, claiming, I mean, everybody, colonialization, but they want to name it and claim it and then just say, hey, well, you know, this is what you have, this is what you're going to deal with, here you got some medication. And I'm like, but same with me, I have lived with it for life. What is medication going to do? Let's not start a medication. I could go all day. It's true. I'm just like, I'm going to try a homeopathic route
until that medication will be the last that I will try.
And they charge a hell of a lot of money for these things.
Exactly, it doesn't make any sense.
We might have the NHS here, but
it doesn't make any sense.
The cost for stuff is wild.
It's too intense.
Yeah,
it's too intense. But yeah, so there's just a lot of questions that I have just regarding that. But yeah, that's it. I don't know if you have any questions for me, by the way. More questions.
No. I've got one here.
Okay, cool.
How has denial or not living in your truth affected your mental health?
How has denial affected? You know, I didn't know that I was in denial because, like, I grew up in a very black household, and I literally recently spoke to my mom about I want to go into therapy. And my mom's like, "You don't have to go into therapy. You can fix it. It's all in the books. You can get a book for free and just go to the library, read the book, and that's where you have your answer." And I'm like, no, I think I want to talk to a person about certain things. And like when I was diagnosed with ADD, I was like, should I take medication? Shouldn't I take medication?
How long ago was you diagnosed?
Last year, November.
Okay, because usually when I think of ADD, you usually think of like children that have been diagnosed. Well, at least maybe it's just a misconception.
Well, I mean, there was a pre-diagnosis when I was 6.
Okay.
But they never took it further, and this is kind of like something that black families have to deal with, and I think my mom definitely dealt with that, or both my parents dealt with that. Is, are we gonna have her diagnosed at that age? She's already black. She's a woman, and then she's gonna have something written about a disorder,
an extra label.
And so I think my mom definitely took she really dived into it, and she was like, okay, what if my kid has ADD? What if? Because I was happy. I was just too busy, right? I was just going around. I couldn't sleep. I woke them up in the middle of the night, just trying to play. I didn't know exactly. Yeah, it's not good. I mean, for my parents. But my mom, she definitely wanted to tell, she really dived into it, and she was like, my kid is not going to go with medication, and she doesn't have any type of disorder, and she's just a happy kid who just needs to be guided a bit more than my neurotypical sister.
Okay.
Right? I think in career wise, that is difficult. Okay. Now I see where my ADD has a negative effect on me, but there are places where my ADD actually really helps me, and it makes me very creative. It makes me I'm very open. I cannot help that. I'm very open. I don't know if it's my ADD or just me.
Let it flow.
Let it flow, exactly. So, yeah. But what about you?
I don't think, I'm reading the question, how is denial or not living your truth? I feel like I've always lived in my truth. I just feel like I've always lived in my truth. The disorder, at first, I wasn't happy with the disorder. Not so much, it was the labelling that I wasn't happy with, but I wouldn't even say that I knew I was different, but there were things about me that my mum would be like, ooh, like, she don't ramp with that, and ooh, this is a bit different. Yeah. So I've always just been potentially at times a bit OTT or...
what is OTT?
Over the top.
Okay.
Or taking something very sensitively. So as part of my disorder, it's a lot of about how we manage and deal with our emotions. Yeah. So I've always been a bit emotional. Like if I feel like I'm being violent or whatever, like some people go 0, like I'm full blown 100. I've known those things about me.
Very sensitive. Yeah. I don't want to call it very sensitive, but
it's just sensitive. I'm a
sensitive.
sensitive person.
Yes, exactly.
But no, I've always known these things about me. So I've never felt like I've been in denial. Right. The only thing that I would say in terms of being in denial is potentially when I'm having such a good time that sometimes I can trick myself and be like this disorder doesn't exist. What are you talking about? I'm living my best life. And that can affect me because if you do not prepare for the bad days, then I go from being...
You don't believe that you're... Wait.
So sometimes when I'm on cloud 9, you call it like euphoria. Yeah. When I'm just so up there, I'm like, oh no, I don't have a disorder. I don't have like this is all made up. I'm living my best life. Yeah. But the problem is I get so into that thought that by the time I'm coming back to being grounded, suddenly being grounded is not nice. So then I go from being grounded to being really heavily depressed because it's just flipped so quickly.
Yeah.
So I'd say that that's the one way that it's affected me.
Right.
Not being able to be a bit more realistic.
One of the issues that we have with ADD is like you have anxiety disorder.
Okay.
It's just like I'm very sensitive to anxiety, so I can black out really quickly.
Oh.
And I used to have that all the way through school. I just didn't know that it was called a blackout or anxiety. You know, so, but if nobody tells you, not even teachers, that it's actually not normal, and they knew about this, they were just like, oh, but maybe you're just like, it's too high for you. Like, you know, this is like too difficult for you. So you'll go to a school for where you need some special care. Like,
they have a habit. They've got a habit of doing that. I want to say in teachers' defences, I think mental health and a lot of disorders and sort of groupings are, even though some of them have been around for years, I think teachers weren't trained to actually understand what these were.
No.
So it was like such and such has ADHD or maybe depression or these things, but they weren't actually tasked and given the proper training to be able to understand how that can affect someone and what that means.
Yeah.
I think, I'd like to hope that nowadays they're a lot more sensitive towards it, but before they weren't, especially with Black children. I've been speaking to my mum more about this recently. How at times, you know, there'll be three of us in trouble. It'll be me and the two white kids, and it'll be like, "Cool, Sylvie, you're excluded for 2 weeks." Patting out, getting a smack in the hand and sent back to class. And it's those things where it's like you don't realise until you're older, like, was you discriminating against me? Was you, even if you're subconscious, but you was labelling me and sort of setting me up to fail?
Yeah, but that's the thing, the setting up to fail, that is what that's what my issues were. Or no, not my issues. I mean, I was just living life and they were just, you know.
It was their issues.
It was their issues and I was just fine. You know, I love to study, I love to do everything. And it was totally fine. But yeah, I felt that they kind of labeled me. I actually want to ask you, does BPD stop you from being yourself?
Does it stop me? No, I'd say no, because BPD ultimately is a part of me. So it doesn't stop me from being myself.
Okay.
I think, even though a lot of the time I know people are on the fence with the disorder term, the more that I've researched it and understood really what it is, I've been able to understand myself better. To understand, okay, these are things about you. I don't even look at it as a weakness or strength no more. I look, okay, these are things. So, like I said, you're going to be more emotional. You're more sensitive to change in that. And it's just being able to accept that and say, cool, this is me. What can I do to make the best out of what it is that I live through? I'll give you an example. Probably the craziest, silliest example ever. I was in traffic. I think yesterday. Now, usually I'm cussing, I'm like, I'm in traffic. What the hell? What's going on? And I just said, the point of it is you're in traffic. So you can sit here for an hour and cuss at the street and everybody that's got you in traffic, or you can put the music on and live your best life whilst you're in traffic. And it's those things, it's having to say, okay, cool, this is what it is about you. Are you going to play the victim and just keep being helpless? Or are you going to think, okay, cool, how am I going to best help myself to live effectively my best life in a given situation?
Exactly.
So, no, it's fun.
I think, sorry not to cut you off, but you're making me think a lot because, like, I was just recently diagnosed and the word diagnose is also like, and, you know, I was just like, I was focused too much of how they actually labeled me, but I was like, wait, if I was always like this, whatever they label me, that is great. What kind of benefit can I get from it that will better me?
Preach.
So I was just like, you know what? If I have a disorder, then you gotta help me, apparently, because you wanna help me with all these things.
I feel like this question's gonna require a sermon. From your experience, what issues of mental health are hidden or downplayed in the Black community?
Oh, 3 minutes. What is downplayed? And everything is downplayed in the Black community. That is just pretty much Oh man.
Have you heard the saying? This is my dad's favourite saying. You don't air your dirty laundry
Out on the street.
So me and my laundry should drown because you want me to be quiet.
Exactly. Oh my God. Yes. I think, I mean, everything goes back into, history, and for me, at least, it's just like trying to, our parents and our grandparents are so used to surviving that, I'm looking for a way to thrive. So that means that I have to accept certain things about myself, which I don't know if I may like it, but the more I know, for example, about ADD, the more I can thrive because I know what I can ask for people. Mm-hmm. And there are also certain things that I just don't know about or I actually struggle with. So for me, it's I'm looking for a way that we can stop surviving and using those old coping mechanisms and go into thriving and just accept the facts. And we can change our facts if we don't like it. And I think that is something that we have to work in the Black community. Yeah,
I found family a lot of the time had been, some family members, clearly mental health was a topic that
doesn't exist,
don't really want to speak about. There's always but this, but you must not be doing this and that, and it's almost like a blame game rather than actually just acknowledging that there is a deeper issue.
Yeah.
I will say one thing though, my grandma, I absolutely love her. She's from the Seychelles, so she is already still talking about her in her country, even though she's been here for 30 plus years.
Yeah.
But so I had a really bad episode about 2 years ago, and my mum called my grandma, and she would never openly say, how is your mental health or anything like that. That's not a discussion that you're going to have with her. But she called me and she was like, Sylvie, I've cooked food, so you'll be round at what time? And the love felt so real because it was just, sometimes I find, pretty much all my friends are Black. I surround myself with Black people. It's not so much intentional, but it is. I'm comfortable with my people.
Yeah.
I love them, they love me. It's the vibes.
Yeah.
But I find a lot of the time within the Black community, the one thing that I do like is sometimes you don't actually want to discuss your issues or problems. Sometimes you just want to be in the moment and just vibes.
Yeah.
And they understand that.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, of course there are sometimes that you do need to speak about certain things.
Yeah.
But when you want a distraction or you want to just feel better without actually divulging what the issue is.
Just celebrate, just Black joy.
Exactly.
Black joy.
Yes.
Period.
100%.
Yeah. And that's enough.
Yeah, and that is what they do for me.
Yeah.
But I need these mental health issues to be discussed more. The one thing that I love about my platform over lockdown and just me being more honest, like, so I shaved my hair off last week because I was having really bad trichotillomania, effectively pulling out my hair when I was being stressed out. And the most amount of interaction of people that I've spoken to are people that I don't know at all, or from social media in the Black community, particularly men, which is,
love it.
Yeah, it's been mad because when I think about Black men, and maybe this is just even a deep-rooted misconception, not even misconception, but stereotype that you have that they don't want to talk about it. They've been reaching out saying, I can relate to you, or can you signpost me? And I'm like, wow, this is love, this is excellence to be able to share my truth and help someone out in the community on their journey. Yeah,
and I think sharing your truth, how difficult it is again, we're going from surviving to thriving. And I think that's where we are. We are like literally in that, we're changing the mindset. We're literally, 2020 is difficult, but you see a mindset and a shift changing in the Black community of the way we are thinking. What just cannot live anymore. We need to bury that and just start
100%.
Start again and have these open dialogues.
I think 2020 is just so good for people to actually be vulnerable because like you were saying about be it just living and thriving, I think the Black community is now slowly understanding that being vulnerable is thriving, being strong is no longer, I think everyone thought showing that you were strong was thriving, and they're now realizing that being vulnerable is actually thriving because you can enforce change.
Yeah, true.
I know that for Indian communities, talking about miscarriage and infertility is such a huge stigma because you feel like a failure, you feel like you've let everybody down, and the disappointment as well. Like, I feel an immense amount of guilt that my husband would be an amazing father, and I see him with our nephews and with our friends' children, and my heart breaks and it bleeds when I see him, because I think, I'm the reason why he's not a father yet.